All right, so good evening and welcome everyone. My name is Vivian Irving and I'm the owner of Book Larder. Just by a show of hands, for how many of you is this your first time here? Ooh, excellent, wow. Excellent. Well, welcome and welcome back to those of you returning. Just a little bit more about who we are. We are a specialty bookstore in our 14th year of operation. We sell 100% cookbooks, food writing, and culinary merchandise. And at the heart of everything that we do is community. And so in addition to that, we also host events like this, author talks, cooking classes, and various gatherings throughout the year. So tonight we're very excited to welcome Jyoti and Auyon Mukharji. They're a mother-son duo here to celebrate the publication of their first book, Heartland Masala. Jyoti's been cooking out of her kitchen, Indian cooking classes for about 15 years. Right. And about 8 years ago, decided to write a book and invited her son along for the journey. So this has been many, many years in the making. It's turned out beautifully. It includes Jyoti's expertise and recipes from her classes, as well as the history and cultural context through standalone essays from Auyon. It's got beautiful illustrations, 32-page photo spread of all the recipes. So congratulations, you two. It's really wonderful. Thank you. So they're going to talk about that. They're also going to do a demo of the masala Brussels sprouts on page 93. That'll be about 35 to 40 minutes. We'll leave some time for Q&A, so think of your questions throughout the show. And then we'll also have a signing after. So all your books are already signed, but if you'd like to come up, meet the authors, and get your books personalized, we'll do that. We'll come back to share more about how that will work. All right, so without further ado, Jyoti and Auyon, there you go. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, folks. Thank you so much for being here. It is surreal to not only have the book out, but also for both of us to be this far from home and have a full room of folks to get to speak to. So we really appreciate you being here. Thank you. We are, as Vivian, thank you, Vivian, also for that lovely intro. We are going to talk a little bit, also do a demo, and then we'd love, over the course of our chat, for you all to be thinking about questions you'd like for us to answer, because we're psyched to answer those too. We've been, some of our talks have been moderated by a third party, or second party, however you want to think about it. And so the fact that we are doing this on our own feels a little daring, and we're excited about it. But we'd love for your help in thinking about questions you'd love for us to answer too. I'm going to let my mom talk a little bit about how she got here.
It was a lot of work. So I have been teaching for the last 15 years. I am from Kansas. And I am a retired physician, and I've always had a passion to cook. I did not cook as a young girl. The focus always was on studies, and so I studied medicine as prescribed by my parents, and then met my husband when I was 17 in med school. We graduated and he came here to the United States, and then I did my residency, did my fellowship, and then I decided to quit medicine because we had Auyon's older brother has an offshoot of autism, and so I felt I was needed more at home than I was outside. And so I quit medicine, and that was in 1987, and I have no regrets. I was very happy as a mother, and I had the most wonderful time raising these boys. We have 3 boys, and when our oldest son was a senior in high school and was graduating, I decided it was time for me to give my time to the community, because the community had helped us raise our oldest son. And so I was looking for opportunities, and I finally found my heart was in this organization called Head Start, which I'm sure all of you know. It is to help underprivileged children do their pre-K, and then they are ready to compete with the rest of the community when they go into the public school system. And so when I joined, I was asked to get on the board. I was on the board, and then the year I joined the board, they used to, 75% of this funding for the Head Start comes from the federal government. 25% has to be raised by the board in volunteer hours, in fundraisers, and in grant writing. So one of the fundraisers they did at the time was a golf tournament. The year I joined the board, they decided to add a silent auction. I decided to donate an Indian dinner for 8. I did it for 4 years, and every year the same people would buy it. We'd raise the price, they'd buy it again, we'd raise the price. So finally, the 4th year I was doing it, I would invite 2 of my friends from the board to come and be the hostesses with me to extract more money out of these people. And so the 4th year that we were doing it, one of these friends happened to be of Greek descent, and she said, you know, this is so much fun, I think I'm going to donate a Greek dinner next year. So she went and told the board member that she was going to donate a Greek dinner. Well, this board member came to me and said, instead of doing 2 dinners, why don't you do a cooking class? I sold my first class at this auction on in October of 2009. I did my first class with these people on February 6th, 2010. And that day, I felt I had achieved nirvana. My passion to cook as a mother and my passion to teach as a little girl just all came together that day. And my husband, who saw me after the class, he said, why don't you do this as a hobby? Well, the rest is history. Do you know that when I left home on September 2nd for this tour, for this book tour, how many people I have had through my kitchen? Would anybody like to guess? And I am a not-for-profit. Well, that comes later, but I don't advertise anywhere. I'm not anywhere on social media. I am just a word-of-mouth business. And I teach in my kitchen at home. Would anybody like to guess how many people I've had?
1,000 people.
Wonderful. Anyone else? When I left home and I counted over the years that how many I've had, because I do have to tabulate every year, it was 6,500.
Wow.
And I do not advertise anywhere. The media has been very kind. They write articles about me, so I get advertised automatically. But I personally do not put an ad. You won't find me. If you try to Google Jyoti's Indian Kitchen, you will find nothing. But yes, if you do Google my name, then a whole lot of stuff comes up as to what I do. But it's not something that I have invested in or I do. And since 2019, I've become a not-for-profit. So all my profits from the classes that I get, they're all donated to local charities that I support in the city. And 3 years into my teaching, my students said, why don't you write a cookbook? And so I thought that was a brilliant idea. And I decided, well, I was going to do it, and I would get all my recipes together, staple them, maybe put them in a spiral bound, and just, sell it to them. And then Auyon had been doing a little ghost writing for me, because when the magazines would ask me to write something, I would have him do it because he's an excellent writer. So I asked him, I said, would you like to write the book? And he said, yeah. He thought I was fibbing and didn't quite.
I was bluffing. I knew you wanted to do it, but I didn't think.
So anyway, I'll let you take it over.
Yeah. Hello. My name is Auyon. As I feel like I'm a lot louder than you. Should I be speaking more softly? Or no? Great. Okay. Excellent. I said yes to my mother, but assumed she would not follow up. And it took her about a year to follow up, but then once it happened, it was too late to turn around. She's, as my mother has and will continue to demonstrate today, she's a very powerful woman. And very difficult to say no to. So I yeah, once we were in it, we were too far gone for me to turn around. My day job, I play music in a band called Darling Side, which I think I've seen many faces here. Thank you. Thanks for coming out. And so by the time it became clear that we were doing this properly, I started compiling recipes and doing things in between tour stints when I was off the road. And I think realized that regardless of what we were doing, it was going to be a lot of work, and to put something together that I felt good about, and also recognize that making yet another book of family recipes from an upper middle class Indian household in the US or the UK was not a genre that I felt I wanted to add to. It's a lovely genre. There are many great books out there that are doing that, that have done that, and I didn't want to add another one. So in thinking about what I could do or how we could frame this that would feel more satisfying, given that we were going to be doing a lot of work on it anyway, I got excited, inspired by a few friends to work on the history and presenting history and cultural context alongside the recipes, which was a great idea, except I needed to learn about that before I presented anything, so that ended up being this book has been in the works for 8 years. For several of those years, my mother, who, as she mentioned, her vision for it was like iPhone photos, spiral bound at Kinko's, and just like hand dish them out, was wondering what I was doing for several of those years. A few years in, she started threatening her own death, just like, I'm going to die before this thing's come. She was and is in good health, but she was just starting to threaten death, her own death, if I didn't get it together. So I think now, once I sort of was able to explain what I was doing, which took some time, she and I are both quite pleased with the product. But that's sort of what you're holding in front of you is the backbone of the book is my mom's recipes. And then I sort of undertook a independent course of study on Indian culinary history, which I've loved studying. And that's, yeah, a huge part of the book is that, both in the form of the head notes, which are the pre-recipe blurbs, and also in standalone essays that are sprinkled throughout the book. And overall, it was a pretty, there have been rocky bits. Our recipe testing cannot be fairly described as nonviolent. There are some really great mother-daughter cookbooks out there where the daughter consistently describes the mother in like glowing terms of just like it was just beautiful to learn and smooth and great. Ours we could not do that. It was rough. A lot of very mean things said that I'm sure we'll get into. It's funny now, but it got outside of recipe testing though. Things have been pretty smooth. Touring together, we're on a 2-month tour right now. Is going pretty smoothly.
I think we are quite a team.
Yeah, but that's because she's the talent and I'm the management, so it's going pretty, like, the hierarchy is very clear. It's when I mistake myself for an equal of my mother's is where I get into a lot of trouble. But I think now we're going to maybe move into some of the recipe world. So the recipe we're going to demo today that we've done a little bit of prep for is called Masala Brussels sprouts, and I'll let my mom jump in.
So what we are going to do is we have, this is an original recipe that I wanted to, so many adults and children do not like Brussels sprouts, and so did mine not like it. So I wanted to make a recipe where I could, motivate my children and other adults to eat Brussels sprouts, because I think it's such a delicious vegetable. So I created this recipe. It took me a little while to get it, but it has made a believer out of a lot of adults. So I hope that you all will go home, and it's an easy recipe to try. You do need a few ingredients, I think 4 or 5, not too many ingredients, but it is quite delicious. So I'm going to do it in front of you. The only thing that I have done is it needs potatoes and Brussels sprouts. I think potatoes make everything taste very good. So that's why I have potatoes here. So what I did was I took a little bit of oil, and potatoes take a little while to cook. So I needed to get a little head start on this. So that is why you will see the potatoes are almost cooked. So what I did was I took a little oil in each of these pans, and once the oil was hot, I added some cumin seeds, and what the cumin seeds did was they infused their flavor into the oil, and in that infused oil I made the potatoes. And I am going to now put the stove on, and we will add these Brussels sprouts, which are right here, and add a few spices that I will add, and then I will have Auyon talk a little bit about the spices. So what I'm going to do is, if I can figure out my stove here, and thank you.
Where do you want it?
6.
Can I briefly talk about that guy real quick?
Yes, sure.
So that technique that my mom described of infusing the hot oil with spices is an Indian technique called, there are a lot of different names for it because there are many different languages in India, but one of them is tadka. In English, it usually translates to sort of tempering spices. And so that's basically where you heat up some sort of fat. It can be an oil of some sort or ghee. And until it's getting like nice and hot and shimmery, adding usually whole spices, although in this recipe you'll see we add whole spices and then there's a second infusion that comes in with some powdered spices. But that's a much quicker process because powdered spices you risk burning. But that can be either used to start a dish the way we're doing here, where you infuse the spices in the oil and then add things. It can also be used as a garnish, as a drizzle. So that's with a lot of dal or lentil small pulse dishes. You'll find that it's drizzled on at the very end, which is a trick you can use all over outside of Indian cuisine as well. So with things like anytime you want a flavored hot fat, which for me is most of the time, things with popcorn, etc., like infusing ghee or butter with an oil and then pouring that over popcorn as opposed to just using butter is a wonderful way to add, if you are looking for another flavor in there.
So I'm going to just add a little salt to the potatoes because it's just easier to mix the salt at this stage than when you are when you added the Brussels sprouts, and we will put more salt with the Brussels sprouts too. From here, what I'm going to do is I have some ground cumin, and I'm going to go ahead, since I'm making it in 2 batches, and you all are going to taste this once it's done. So I'm going to go ahead and split the spice. See how easy it is? You just go for it. And then I have some, this was crushed in a pestle and mortar. You can do it in a spice grinder. These are coriander seeds. Do you know if you throw these in the ground, what do you get? Oh, you guys are so good. Yes, yes, yes. So I'm going to go ahead and add and the last thing I'm going to add is called mango powder. It is amchur. In our language is mango, chur means powder, and I'll let Auyon describe what mango powder is.
So amchur is, you take, you don't actually, other people, the people you're buying it from, take unripe cooking mangoes, which are a different variety, or different varietals than the type you buy and eat fresh. But they take those mangoes, cut them into slices, and then dry them in the sun, and then they're ground up. And again, this is unripe fruit that's sun-dried and then ground up. And what you get is this very tart, fruity powder, which is extremely useful in this dish, and I'm excited for you all to taste it. And for me, this is what makes the dish, like Brussels sprouts, I do like the flavor now that I'm nominally an adult, but I think something that makes Brussels sprouts, the sort of mustardy quality of Brussels sprouts that is hard to swallow for some folks, often needs a strong tempering agent to counterbalance it. Like bacon fat is one of those. In this case, the amchur, which is that sour punch, does a lot. But this is also, again, very useful outside of Indian cooking. If you think about most acids in Western cooking, you've got citrus juices, vinegars, those all have a liquid component as well. So when you want to make something more sour, you also have to add liquid, which isn't problematic when you're doing like a braise or a soup. But if you're cooking something dry and you don't necessarily want to add more liquid, it's a little trickier. Amchur amchur is a great ingredient for those cases because you are adding sour punch, but it's dry, so there's no additional liquid. You can also, vinegar powder is another thing that's a more chefy ingredient. But the fruitiness also of amchur is a really wonderful thing. So, as I think with one of my favorite bits to write in the book was the spice glossary at the end, where I got to describe not only the sort of bits of the botanical, some botanical bits about all the ingredients, but also ways that I like to use all of them outside of Indian fare. Just so when you end up with hopefully a large spice collection after cooking a few things in this book, you have ways to use those spices that don't require you to just use this or other Indian cookbooks, which will allow you to go through them more quickly and hopefully get more excited about using them too.
So what I did was I added Brussels sprouts after I'd added all the ground spices. I'm going to go ahead and add some more salt. This is the salt for the Brussels sprouts itself. And you just, I'm adding the right amount, right?
This was where recipe testing got very difficult.
I don't like to measure, so I just go for it. And now that's all we are going to do is cook these till the Brussels sprouts are crispy and kind of a little crunchy. And till that happens, we will just keep on roasting it. And once they are ready, we will, I guess, dish it out, or whichever way Vivian is going to serve you guys.
I also wanted to talk a little bit about, so my mom mentioned this is her dish, which is the case with several dishes in the book are dishes that she came up with after moving to the US. Several of the dishes are also ones that she learned from her mother or her mother-in-law, and other ones are dishes that she learned from friends of hers from different bits of India. And I have an essay at the beginning of the book that sort of describes how we frame our book in the broader sort of world of Indian cooking. And just to touch on that quickly so you all have a sense, to talk about something as broad as Indian cooking is like talking about something as broad as European cooking, which is very broad. If you were to, before the wonders and terrors of globalization, if you were to show someone from Sweden a piece of biscotti and ask them, is this your people's food? They might A, say no, and B, tell you that anyone who told you that is a liar. Just have a lack of familiarity with Italian food at that point. And the same thing is true of many bits of India, where something that might be deeply familiar and sort of beloved by one bit of India feels very foreign and not at all a part of the cuisine. Or in fact, an alien piece of food in another bit. And so the word authenticity is a very slippery thing. And also just like something that has become more clear to me the more I dive into the history of Indian cooking is how some bits of Indian food that we think of as very integral to Indian cooking are ancient, and other ones are as recent as the 20th century, just very, very recent. And so authenticity, given how slippery it is, really only means something when it is, for me at least, specific to a time and place. And for us, this is our Indian cooking from our home kitchen in Kansas City, which is diasporic cooking, for sure. But but that is sort of, it's a very, very narrow slice of Indian cooking within this huge universe. And so for that reason, sort of that's what ties these recipes together. Is it's how we cook in our house. It is not at all definitive. There are many other versions of any of these recipes. Although my mother did invent this dish, there are almost certainly like hundreds of other aunties elsewhere who have done some very similar things, and they have their own thing there. A way that I like to think about it too, there's a writer named Jose Relat, who's he's the taco editor of Texas Monthly Magazine, which is a job that you can have if you get him fired. And he has this phrase called abuelita syndrome, which is where a lot of folks with a Mexican grandmother might say, that's very different from what my grandmother does, that's inauthentic. Which is, it's totally fine to have a matriarch who sort of determines what your family authenticity is, but the truth is that there are many, many Mexican grandmothers out there. Some of them have gone rogue and are doing all sorts of stuff. And so the idea that any single one determines what is authentic, that's tricky territory is all. So yeah, our book is very much from our kitchen, and that is the tying together quality of that. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great.
Good.
Yeah. I need the lid. So
oh.
what I'm going to do is just, do you see the colors of the dish? What has happened to the Brussels sprouts? They look beautiful right now. I'm just going to cover it for maybe 3-4 minutes just to make it a little softer so that it's not too crunchy and too raw. So we'll just lower the flame, and I don't want any moisture. So we will just do it for maybe literally 3 minutes, and then I will remove the lid, and we'll be ready to, within a few minutes, be ready to serve. All right.
Maybe while we're waiting for this to cook, do you want to talk a little bit about the photography in the book, or how that happened?
Yes. Oh my. So these are 99. There are 99 recipes in the book. Of those 99, 96 are my recipes that I have been teaching in my classes. 3 belong to Auyon. And
2 of mine are, I have 100% of the 2 cocktail recipes in the book. And I also have a sesame brittle. And that's it.
so we had, our photographer was he's a wonderful gentleman from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And he is a Japanese American who does a lot of cookbook photography. And so he came for 10 days to Kansas City. We had a prop artist, we had a food stylist, and we had our publisher's art director. Some of them were staying in our home, and then some of them were local. So we had everybody, we were 6 in the team, all in my kitchen for 9 days. We made 100 recipes, or 99 recipes that we did. Each one was cooked. I don't know if you guys are aware that, you know, there are times when the chef who has written the book doesn't even show up for the photography session. The food stylist actually does all the cooking, and it is not edible because they do all kinds of weird things to the food just so that it looks pretty for the photographs. But I have to tell you that our photographs that are right in the center of the book, all 32 pages of those, every single thing was cooked in the kitchen, and it was eaten by that team of 6 every day for lunch and for dinner. And we would start at 8 in the morning, 8:30. I would start at 6:30, but the rest of them would show up later. And we would work till about 5. And I was one exhausted human being by the time our photography session was done. 100 dishes is a lot of dishes. Even if it was 96, it was a lot. But we had the best time, and every single dish, like I said, it was edible, it was cooked the way it should be cooked. It was not undercooked, it was not overcooked, it was just the way it should be. So whatever you see in the book is what you want to get. And even if you don't, it's perfectly fine, because you know what? We, in fact, on this tour of ours, we've had some restaurant-inspired dinners. And again, so and Auyon had told them that, you know, you take it to whatever you want to do with every recipe. You want to do it ditto, you do it ditto. If you want to do a little riff on it, that's perfectly fine. You take it to whatever level you want to take it. And do you know, it was amazing because there were 5 restaurants ultimately that had done it, and they were just so beautifully different. Each one's take on the recipe was so different and so nicely done. It was actually moving to see what you could do with one recipe and give it to 5 different chefs and what they can do with it. So I would tell you all, you know, take the recipe, you want to do it exactly, that's perfectly fine. But if you have an ingredient, say, you need cumin and coriander, but there's something one of them you have shortage of, you don't need to run to the store. You just be creative, be bold, substitute it with something. If you think you like ginger in it, go for it, not a problem. And if you don't like it, you got to eat it, but next time you'll know, no, ginger doesn't work for this, maybe I will add something different. So it is yours to create, it is yours to make. Indian cooking is not a science like baking, where you have to be so precise that if you don't have the exact measurements, your recipe is going to fail. It will not. One of the chefs at, I don't know if any of you has been to Providence, there's a restaurant called Oberlin. They did our book talk and a meal. And their chef, it was amazing. For dessert, they brought out this beautiful bowl with ice at the bottom, and then on top, he had actually merged 2 recipes in the book into one. This was a fruit cream that I grew up with as a little girl, and a fruit chaat that we all Indians know how to make a fruit chaat, but our fruit chaat in the book is a little different because it has Auyon's creativity into it. And if you notice, there is a unicorn with, you can make it, keep it higher. There is a unicorn with a spray of fruit coming out of its back.
No, it's riding a fruit rainbow, Mo. That's what's happening.
It's riding a fruit rainbow.
So a unicorn riding a fruit rainbow.
All right. So this chef had actually created that food rainbow in the bowl with different fruits. He had plums, he had peaches, he had figs, he had melon, he had watermelon, and then regular cantaloupe. And in the center, he had a bowl of custard. It was so beautiful, and some flowers here and there. It was just the most beautiful dessert that you can ever have. And it was his creation with those 2 recipes. So please take it and do what you want with it. You will never go wrong if you are adding good things to your dish. It can never go wrong. It will always taste good. So, what are you doing?
Finishing up. Taking salt. Why don't you take the salt? Why? What am I doing? This is a good example of how I get in trouble.
So, did you add the salt?
I've added some, but you should taste.
All right.
The other aspect of so we have both, in this book we have both photographs, and as you may have guessed, if you haven't found it in the book yet, the unicorn on the fruit rainbow is not a photograph. It's an illustration, and we got to work with a wonderful illustrator named Olivier Kugler, who's a German illustrator based in London. And the illustration bit was important for me. So today is an exciting day for a number of reasons. 1, we're in Seattle. 2, Samin Nusrat's new book, Good Things, just came out, which is very exciting. Her first book, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, the illustrations in that book by an illustrator named Wendy McNaughton were a huge influence on how I was thinking about our illustrations in our book. I love her work, and illustrations are like playful. They add a levity to writing in a way that I love. Sometimes even with instructional illustrations can be more enlightening than photographic equivalents, just because you can highlight exactly what you want. And so for me, having illustration was important, also because I was doing a lot of that historical and cultural writing, risking sort of, there was the risk of being a little bit too dense or sort of coming off as a little too serious. And it is serious. I do take myself seriously, and we have a unicorn on a fruit rainbow. So like that is important. That was an important counterbalance, I think, to having to having some of the more academic-ish writing in a cookbook, and also having me and my mom as different voices in the book. So illustration was I wanted that to be the primary currency of the book, visual currency. But since my mom knew that she wanted illustration, we did sort of a retro cookbook thing, which is having a 32-page photo insert basically in the middle of the book. So it's almost like you're leafing through a photo library, And that way, that was also partially because I haven't seen a whole lot of books where illustration and photography on the same spread don't take away from one another. That's a tricky thing. That was a double negative too. Apologies for those of you who are English nerds. Yeah, so this way we sort of keep the photography intact as one thing and then the illustration separate, which I liked a lot. And I was grateful to our publisher for allowing us to do that. I think we are now quickly getting into serving and hanging out and also answering questions. Are there any folks out there who have any questions or things they'd like us to address? Yes?
Take it like this.
Who did? Yeah, so our publisher is a company called the Collective Book Studio. And they are based in Oakland, California. And they are a hybrid publisher, which is somewhere between self-publishing and traditional publishing. When I met up with an agent to discuss, because I had dreams of this book being within the sort of high-end, or the big-name cookbook publishing houses, which is, I recognize, a very strange sentence, very specific thing, very specific dream that I had, that didn't happen. And the agent was very kindly said, "This book sounds very cool. It's way too pinky for traditional publishing. Like that's a very risk-averse group of folks, with good reason. A lot of cookbooks don't even make back their advances. So if you want to publish this the way you want to, without sort of giving up control, you're going to need to figure out another way to do it. And what many of you are holding, is the book of our dreams. That is, this is exactly what we wanted to make. We got very little pushback from the company we ended up working with. Part of the reason is because, I mentioned hybrid. The self-published part of it is that we took on the risk. So we invested in all of it, and by we I mean my parents, because I play music, but the traditional publishing part of it is that rather than hiring a bunch of folks a la carte, it's a fully stacked publishing house. And so we had a lot of support, which is really nice. But they allowed us a lot of latitude in doing what we wanted to do. So we're very grateful to them. And a big reason also that we did that was it's very hard to find distribution, like real distribution with Book World if you self-publish. But our publishing company it distributes through Simon & Schuster. So as far as bookstores are concerned, we are as legitimate as anyone, maybe not as anyone, but we have real distribution. It's easy for them to get a hold of our books, which is really nice. Yes, Zach.
What's the most surprising thing you learned in your research about culture, context?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the thing that sort of is the most surprising through line that I kept coming back to is just this kaleidoscoping of how far what we think of as Indian history goes back, in that there are some things that feel very Indian that go back millennia, and other things that feel very Indian that were as recent as the 20th century. Like chai being as popular as it is extremely recent. The phenomena of like butter chicken and tandoori chicken being like global phenomena and also very iconic within India, extremely recent. Those are both like partition era, which is like mid 20th century. On the other hand, Indian people have been eating eggplants for a very long time, native to the subcontinent. But the chili pepper, which is also a nightshade that we associate with, that many rightly associate with Indian cuisine, is a New World fruit. Didn't make it there until like the 15th, 16th century at the very earliest. And so I think it informed this idea, and I don't think any of that makes anything more or less Indian, to be clear. I think it's like that cuisine is extremely dynamic. Culture is extremely dynamic. Things, and there's often this, I would get in trouble, I think, on a lot of college campuses for my views these days, but the sort of claims of cultural ownership sort of, in my mind, are also associated with the static idea of what a culture is. And it is constantly changing. It has always constantly changed. And to sort of, it's often like and the more history I read, the more sort of shocked I am at how recently things are, like how recent things that I think of as very Indian, and I still believe are very Indian, came to be. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. Yes? Yeah, totally. So so first off, like, thank you for that question. Excellent. And part of what I was trying to address with the book, or the reason I was getting uncomfortable with just like putting out another cookbook that might have been a bunch of family recipes from, again, an upper class upper caste. And for those of you who are less familiar with the subcontinent, caste was technically abolished decades ago and still plays a huge role in terms of the culture, and it's a repugnant aspect of the culture for sure. And yeah, deeply problematic part of South Asian culture these days. And by creating yet another book that is from, like our family recipes are, by dint of who we are, going to come from those same households that have been publishing things and sort of determining the narrative around Indian food for a while. How do we correct for that, or at least like attempt to correct for it? And so some of the historical context was part of that. Not to suggest that all of the historical context bits that we have in the book are related to caste and class, but having a statement at the beginning that sort of suggests, like, that gives what we're doing. But there's one particular essay, the meat that you mentioned, that we have a note on beef. And so a lot of folks associate Indian people with also people who don't eat any beef, which is true for many Hindus, and is also an active export of like the right-wing Hindu government, in the government of India right now, which is with Narendra Modi and the BJP, and that this idea of like people who are Indian don't eat beef, people who are Indian are Hindu, people who do eat beef are therefore not Indian, alienates a huge number, millions upon millions, of Indians who do eat beef, lower caste Hindus, Muslims, otherwise sort of disenfranchised minorities. And so our essay describes sort of my reading on the history of beef eating in India, which is, although it has a pretty long tail, the the cow protection movement that now defines a lot of that right-wing ideology is like 19th century recent, like pretty recent. And that essay ends with an encouragement to try the previous recipe with beef instead of turkey. Which, if this book does well, there will be some upset people, which I'm hoping I'm hoping we get there. But that's like an example. Our book is by no means comprehensive in that sense, but that's the sort of world of stuff that I was excited to explore alongside these recipes that are definitely part of the problem, effectively. Mm-hmm. Yes, up front, and then up. Where can one buy amchur?
Indian markets, of course. Amazon has it. Specialty food stores, but the cheapest you'll find is at the Indian markets. And I tell that to all my students that, if you are going to cook Indian, go to the Indian market, because for several reasons. One, it is the cheapest. Two, what you get is very fresh, because the turnover is so high of the spices, the beans, the lentils, that what you're going to buy there is very, very fresh. Also, just to let you know that sometimes my students do complain that when they go there to an Indian market, the people don't want to talk to them. And it is not because they are being rude, it is because they have a language issue. And they are not able to speak English as well, so they just kind of prefer not to say anything unless you approach them. So I always tell my students to take their menus when they come for a class, take the menu so that, or write it on a piece of paper so that you can show it to them, because you have a hard time understanding their accent and they have a hard time understanding your accent. So it makes it a little confusing. So the best is if you have it on paper, they will be able to guide you to the right aisle, to the right place. And so my advice always is get it from an Indian market. And now, there was a time when we moved to Kansas City in 1987, there was one Indian market, and this is the Midwest, so it's very, very sheltered. And one Indian market and one very, very bad Indian restaurant. Today, that Indian restaurant fortunately closed, but today we have probably about 20 Indian restaurants in Kansas City and an equal number of Indian markets. And they're all doing well, not because of the Indian community in Kansas City, it's because of the local community. So, and I know that part of the reason is because vegetarianism is so big, and so is veganism, that people, and what people want to eat healthy. They want to eat more vegetarian. They want to eat more vegetables, but with a little more variety. So that is why I think the Indian cuisine has just blossomed, and it seems to be the thing to eat.
We do have a spice shopping Q&A, a comic in the book that sort of describes what that experience might look like. For me, my mom says it's a language barrier issue. I definitely feel a little bit of condescension when I go in, and I think it's because they can smell that I like don't know what I'm doing. And it feels good. It feels like I'm a little out of place. It feels like I'm in a different country in a way that I quite like too. And I think that plays into a theme within our book, which is this is not necessarily quick and easy Indian cooking. If that is what you're looking for, there are many other excellent books out there. The idea of like if you're looking to invest in this and like dive a little deeper, that you will be rewarded with a wealth of experiences from both in the kitchen and the act of shopping too, which I recommend splitting from the act of cooking by a day, because sometimes you feel a little exhausted walking out of the Indian store, but in a way that feels good too. And for those of you who don't have access to an Indian store or otherwise prefer online stuff, we have a list of retailers at the end of the book as well, where you can order stuff online. There's another question. Yes?
Okay.
Everything here looks amazing and delicious. I'm curious if you have any recommendations for starting points for stuff that's doable on a weeknight.
Totally.
Yes.
You want to talk about lemon rice?
Yeah. You know, there are several recipes that you can do that are easy, that are, one is lemon rice, which is peanuts, mustard seeds, little asafoetida, if you have it at home, and lemon juice. It is very, very easy to do. It is actually our youngest son, his favorite. He is 36. He still loves it. So when I go to Providence to visit them, I still make lemon rice for him and take it because it's just so delicious. The only thing special you need for that is curry leaves, but you know, they're available at a lot of Indian markets. Yes, you get them.
Aurora here.
Oh, great.
So good. If you can get those, then you have no problem making lemon rice. There is a corn chart that is very easy to make. It's fresh corn. You shuck it, and in a little bit of butter, you kind of saute till the edges get a little brown. Then you take it off the stove and you add some fresh ginger, grated ginger, some lemon juice, some cilantro, some green chilies if you eat green chilies, or anything that doesn't have too much heat, and mix it all up and serve it. It is so delicious as a side dish. Spiced watermelon, that's another wonderful dish, very easy. If you have watermelon already in the fridge, all you have to do is put a garnish on it, and the garnish is, I don't think we have nigella seeds here, but these are also called black cumin. The nigella seeds, ground cumin, and ground coriander in hot oil, sizzling. And you sizzle these spices and just pour it over the watermelon. The trick to that is the salt must be added just when you're ready to serve. If you add salt to watermelon ahead of time, then you have a little disaster on your hands because the water will all just come out of the watermelon and it doesn't look very pretty. But that's the only trick. So if you have, and you can garnish it even the day before, as long as you don't add the salt. Yesterday we were in Portland, Oregon, and we had a book talk, but the store owner had done a couple of dishes, and she made this spiced watermelon, but instead of just the watermelon, she'd also added cantaloupe, very sweet cantaloupe, and it was just divine. So please take it to another level, add anything you want to something so simple, and you can just create such a delicious, and I call it delightfully delicious dish. Any fruit that you have left over, add it and put this garnish on top. It is really, really lovely. And
Should we maybe, we have
yes.
time for another question?
Yes.
Yeah. Great. Any other questions? Yes.
Oh,
Our favorite recipes in the cookbook. Do you want to go ahead?
my favorite recipe, I think my favorite recipe is a goat meat curry that I love to make. But if you asked me what my students liked, what is their favorite recipe from the book, it's butter chicken.
Since they're my mom's recipes mostly, I have many favorite recipes, but I have one favorite illustration in the book, which is an illustration of two lemons hiking out of the Himalaya, which is close to the end of the book, that is right across from our lemonade recipe. The lemons look like they're having a really good time, and I would like to be with them. Yes?
What kind of salt were you using? I noticed that you pinched a lot on the recipe, and it didn't taste at all. I mean, it was beautiful. It was so balanced.
Thanks to Vivian.
It's just table salt, I believe. Kosher. Yeah, kosher table salt. Yeah.
We were doing a little flourishy things. I think maybe it was just showmanship.
Do you have a recommendation for a basic entree, a starter entree?
Maybe the keema mutter?
Not starter, but beginner entree.
Yeah, good idea.
Thank you.
Yes. A ground meat curry. And in the book, I think we use turkey, but you can use beef if you want. You can use chicken. The trick to that, or the practical thing to that, is it's very easy to do it if you just follow the directions. But ground meat, when you make it into a curry, or when you try to saute it, it tends to form lumps. There is a trick to not having the lumps, and that is a practical tip, nothing to do with Indian cooking only, and that is you take your ground meat and add, like we call for tomato sauce or tomato puree in the curry. You take that tomato sauce or tomato puree and add it to the ground meat before you put it on the stove, before you start cooking anything. And just with your hands, use these hands. They are so good. This is the best, these are the best tools we have, kitchen tools. And with your hands, just mix it real well, and that tomato will prevent it from making lumps.
And that recipe is called keema mutter, so Keema. And mutter, so keema is the meat, mutter means peas, it's meat with peas. And if you're looking for a vegetarian entree, I would go one of the simpler dals in the book. We have a chapter that has many dals in it, but there are several that are pretty straightforward. And so starting with one of the ones that seems like it's less ingredient intensive is a great place to start. I think we are just about out of time for questions, but we'll be hanging out here and would love to say hello and personalize books.
Yes, thank you.
Before that, a huge thank you to Vivian and Aaron and the folks here. Yeah, really. Thank you. And also a huge thank you to you all. It is extremely surreal to be, as I mentioned before, this far away from home and on this cookbook tour and getting to hang out with a room full of lovely people. So we really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I have to tell you that for me, I generally don't, never traveling with the band. Auyon thinks that his mother is so young that she can do this. And so I left home on the 2nd of September. And I'm not getting home till the 25th of September, and that is not the end of the tour. I'm home for a week, and then we leave again to do the Midwest. But I'm grateful that he thinks that I can be in a different bed every night, and that I can travel, and that...
She's doing great. Keep it up. Thank you all again.
So really, thank you. But what I wanted to say was the support that I see that Darlingside has, that Auyon has, the love that is given to these boys when they are traveling. It is so wonderful to see how loved these guys are. So thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.